Saint Francis, one of the most widely known saints to this day, was an iconic man during the Middle Ages. Born in 1181, the young man would come to change aspects of the church that we still can see to this day. Francis grew up wearing expensive clothes and living luxuriously. His carefree party life, however, met its end when he had a spiritual awakening. Francis heard the Lord speak to him, and it rapidly changed his life.
Francis, my child, leave this life of lavish extravagance. You must repair the Christian church, leave all material possessions behind, and follow me.
After the command from God, Francis renounced all his wealth and the lifestyle he had been living to live a life of poverty and service to others.
The Franciscan order had very distinct differences from the Benedictines. Franciscan spirituality is characterized by a life of poverty, love of nature, and giving charity to those in need. The Benedictines focused more on perfection of community and liturgical prayer. They believed memorizing the Bible was very important, while the Franciscans put more of an emphasis on living it out. During this time, religious fervor was renewed. New religious movements were formed. Reformation was not a novel concept, and it took a new form in this time. In the early 12th century, Reformed orders flooded the cities, rejecting social lifestyle. In the later part of the 12th century, however, the new religious groups embraced urban life. Men and women of all economic backgrounds were unhappy with the way that the church had been run. They felt it had grown too wealthy, impersonal, and spiritually superficial. Members of the Orthodox religious movement were very focused on a life of Christ, making the Eucharist the center of their lives. There was another sect similar to the Brotherhood of Assisi that formed during the 12th century called the Cathars. They denounced the material world like the Franciscans, but there was one more major difference. The Franciscans were utterly loyal to the church and clergy, while the Cathars challenged the church hierarchy. The church labeled the Cathars as heretics, regardless of their practices, while the Franciscans were allowed to form and saved from being labeled as a threat because of their devotion to the church. To establish a new order, the Brotherhood of Assisi had to impress first the Bishop of Assisi, then Cardinal Giovanni di San Paolo, and finally the current Pope, Innocent III. This was achieved once each member of the hierarchy saw the Brotherhood's fierce devotion to the church and clergy. The group was tonsured, meaning they shaved their hair from their scalps to show their renunciation of worldly fashion, and Francis was ordained as a deacon.
Canonization, or the act of declaring a deceased person a saint, has changed and progressed throughout time. In the very beginning, there was no formal process of recognizing a saint, but all Christian martyrs were recognized. Then those who expressed their faith through their actions in life, but were not martyrs, were able to be recognized with the approval of the bishop.
In 993, the first papal canonization occurred, and after the year 1153, only popes declared people to be saints. Currently, there are certain steps now that the Church goes through in order to canonize someone, and someone can only be canonized after 5 years of being deceased.
Currently, the canonization process begins when a local bishop investigates the candidate's life and writing for evidence of heroic virtue. Then this is sent to the Vatican. Next, a panel of theologians and cardinals evaluate the candidate's life. Then, if the panel approves, the Pope proclaims the candidate venerable, which means that the person is a role model of Catholic virtues. The next step towards sainthood is beatification, which allows a person to be honored by a particular group or region. But in order to beatify a candidate, there must be evidence of a posthumous miracle. Martyrs can be beatified without evidence of a miracle. In order for the candidate to be considered a saint, there must be proof of a second posthumous miracle. If there is, the person is canonized.
Saint Francis of Assisi, however, became a saint only 2 years after his death, because the way he had lived his life, Pope Gregory found very impressive. He showed his Christian virtue through a life of poverty, preaching penance and ministering to lepers. He also performed miracles through God, such as healing a man with leprosy and taming a wild wolf that had been terrorizing a town. He did so through prayer. The idea of sainthood is actually described in neither the Jewish nor the Christian scriptures. However, there is evidence of a Christian veneration of Jesus and his disciples at a very early stage of Christianity. Later, people persecuted and martyred for their Christian faith were also venerated. After the general persecutions ended, people who lived their lives as monks or as generally holy people were also venerated. All of this is believed to have become the basis for the concept of Christian sainthood.
A saint in the Catholic Church is someone who is venerated and is now believed by the Church to be in heaven with God.
As seen with the Cathar order, the Catholic Church does not allow anyone to break off from the Church who does not obey their orders. The only reason the Franciscan order was allowed to become a sect was because they were still devoted and loyal to the Pope, clergy, and Church. Since the Cathars were not, the Catholic Church could not allow them to exist. The Catholic Church wants the most control, and their politics surround the idea of them being in charge of everyone. They fear those who undermine their power, just as Rome feared the Christians.
Francis of Assisi continues to influence us to this day. It is Francis who created the first living nativity scene in the village of Greccio in 1223. The Franciscan order continues to follow the old ways of Francis as well, with their current mission statement. Living and proclaiming the gospel is our goal. We do so as brothers to each other and to the world, living with and for the poor, promoting justice, peace, and the care of creation, working with all women and men of goodwill and inviting them to share our Franciscan spirit. Facing our future with hope, we echo Francis of Assisi, who said, "Let us begin again."